the speed. Touchdown.
Welcome into the latest Mac and Mose. This is the final Mac and Mose preview of the regular season, which is
it's gone fast,
which is crazy, kind of sad for me personally. But we're going to talk about
we'll get over it.
The 119th Civil War between the Oregon Ducks and the Oregon State Beavers. This has been obviously one of the longest rivalries in college football. Lately, it hasn't really been super competitive. There have been some close games. The Ducks have reeled off 7 straight wins in this particular series. Since the mid-'70s, they've really dominated this rivalry. And the way things are going this year, Oregon, one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in college football. Oregon State, probably one of the coldest teams. It doesn't look like a good matchup, but we've seen it time and time again with these rivalry games. You can't throw everything out the window, but it's at least at the start of this one, I expect both of these teams are going to be fired up. I think Oregon State's probably going to raise their level a little bit.
For sure.
And it should at least be an exciting start, and it's an important game for Oregon. And they're fortunate to have it at home this year.
Yeah, you saw some Oregon State guys on social media at the beginning of this week, kind of throwing some shots out there about how they hate the Ducks, and I saw a guy who didn't get a scholarship offer from Oregon, and now he's going to take it out on the Ducks, and that's great. That's good flavor. That's good energy to be bringing into this game. And yeah, the Beavs do need it. They've lost 8 in a row. This season they've lost 7 straight in this series. But to your point, there's been some competitive games in there. Oregon wants to keep its momentum going and needs to be on alert. And Mark Helfrich said the other day he knows they need to be on alert. That this is the Beavers bowl game. They can spoil a lot of things for Oregon. The Ducks are riding pretty high. They're still holding out hope for a New Year's 6 bowl game, and so they've got to keep making this statement to the country that this is, at this point in the year, one of the best teams in the country.
I think too we might overlook it sometimes because Oregon has had so much success in this rivalry in recent years that maybe it's lost on the players a little bit, or they're not fired up. But Marcus Mariota was in town last weekend, and I was talking with someone who had spent some time with him over the past week or so, and just talked about some of his games at Oregon that were favorites for him or most important, and he brought up the Civil War 2 years ago, where he had to find Josh Huff in the end zone at the end of that game to win it. But it was my point, I guess, sort of long-winded to get there, is for Marcus, I think he felt like Oregon State was the team he wanted to beat every year. It was a rival. For a lot of the fans, I think it's still Washington. But it was maybe refreshing a little bit and kind of neat to see, that maybe the players care a little bit more about this rivalry than at least the perception is on the outside right now.
And that game a couple years ago speaks to just how close Oregon's margin of error has been in a few of these, that even though the 7-game winning streak makes it look like the Ducks have been totally dominant in this series, that was a close call. It might only be a 1-game winning streak if not for pulling that one off. That said, in the month of November, Oregon has 68 plays of 10 yards or more. It leads the nation. In the month of November, Oregon State has given up 68 plays of 10 yards or more, the same number. That's the worst in the nation. So you've got, the most explosive offense in the country going against the defense that gives up the most explosion plays, at least over the last, over the last 3 weeks. So it's a tough matchup right now, particularly for Oregon State's defense.
Oregon coming into this one with a 5-game winning streak. They're averaging close to 45 points per game in their last 3 wins. Oregon State, as you mentioned, giving up about 45 points per game in their 3 losses coming into this one. So it's been a rough November, a rough first year for Coach Anderson, their first-year head coach at Oregon State. Lots of different sort of storylines, though, for Oregon in this one as they try to improve their resume as much as they possibly can. Now that we know that the Ducks are not going to make the Pac-12 championship game, which is an important thing to note because that would be at least one more opportunity to pick off another victory. And people, at least based on what we saw last year in the college football playoff, those conference championship games had a lot to do with those final rankings, and Ohio State was able to jump in there because of their performance in their championship game. That's not on the table for Oregon this year, so I think it's imperative that the Ducks are able to come out and really sort of make a statement if they can, have Vernon Adams continue his wizardry at the quarterback position, Adams in the last 2 games, a passer rating of over 280 in both of those games. He now owns the number 2 and number 3 single game highest passer rating in a single game in Oregon history behind Darren Thomas. And no offense to Darren, but his came against Nevada. Vernon's came against 2 top 25 opponents. So he is playing at the top of his game. And this is his final regular season game, final home game for all of the seniors on this Oregon team. So they're definitely motivated in this one, and a chance to continue that sort of streak, and hopefully open some eyes maybe in that college football playoff discussion room that, hey, now that they're healthy, they've got their quarterback, they've got their top receiver back, their defense has been able to sort some things out over the course of the year, that this is a team that might deserve to be in a New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah, we saw a nice jump in the playoff standings that came out earlier this week from 23 to 17. It's going to take another jump, at least that much, next week. And while Oregon won't be participating in the conference championship week the following weekend, some people are going to fall that weekend too. Some good teams are going to be going head to head, and some people are going to drop. I tend to think the Ducks probably need to get into about 9th or 10th in the playoff standings, in the playoff committee standings, to get an at-large berth, hopefully, to the Fiesta Bowl. Best case scenario, obviously, Stanford thumps Notre Dame this week. Some other things shake out, and Stanford makes the playoff. Oregon gets picked up by the Rose Bowl. All of that, of course, is contingent on the Ducks beating the Beavers Friday, not overlooking this game. We can enjoy looking forward and thinking through all these what-if scenarios, but if the players start doing that, they'll get caught. So I think coaches are working real hard, as they always do, and have done successfully, I think, over the years of making sure guys are just focused on this game.
Vernon Adams will qualify for most of the all of the statistical categories after this game. Nationally, you have to play in 75% of your team's games. This will be his 9th game in 12, which is 75%. So expect to see him ranked among the top 3 in passer efficiency. Touchdown-wise, he's got 22 in very limited action. Yeah. It's pretty remarkable. He's right up there with some of the Heisman candidates and Davey O'Brien candidates in all of his statistics. Royce Freeman still has a shot at the Pac-12 rushing title. He's number 3 nationally. DeForest Buckner continues to have sort of this unsung season where he's been one of the better players in college football, but statistically the Oregon defense, I think, has cast a poor light on the entire unit, which is unfair to DeForest, so he's not going to receive the notoriety that he probably should this year. You can look back on it probably next spring when he's drafted in the top 10 of the NFL draft, like, oh, maybe this guy had a pretty good senior season that nobody talked about.
Lombardi Award Committee.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm excited for those guys. We're going to try as hard as we can to kind of pump them up a little bit down the stretch here, and when it's all said and done, they've got this game. They have to win it. That cannot be stated enough. This is a must. It's a must victory for going forward for this Oregon team. But then they'll have another game after it, and a chance to really sort of end this season the way it started on a better note than I think most people would have expected when the Ducks were sitting at 3-3.
Yeah, who would have thought 6 weeks ago we'd be sitting here talking about the potential for a New Year's Six Bowl, and even the Rose Bowl seemed in play. The team, the issues with this team seemed so significant at that point. It was hard to imagine them overcoming them this well. But as we mentioned last week, the staff stuck with it. The players bought in, stayed with the program. Nobody quit on anything, and they rallied. You mentioned Vernon, and yards per attempt, yards per completion are other stats where he's going to be far away better than most anybody in the country once he qualifies to the leaders. And I'm interested to see if Oregon continues against Oregon State to exploit his big playability, pushing it down the field, or is this a game where Royce Freeman and the running backs, as they did against Cal, really pile up a bunch of, was it Cal am I thinking of? Go for a bunch of yards, and the Oregon's 4 deep at the running back position. How they decide to attack this Oregon State defense, I think will be one of the interesting things to watch Friday.
Yeah, normally we'll talk a little bit about each position group or each side of the ball against the other. Statistically, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's a very lopsided matchup. Oregon State still has some playmakers. They have some veteran guys. Storm Barwoods, who we were joking before we started taping, has been there since the Pac-8, along with Wilson from Utah. And
I was covering those guys back when I was at the Emerald.
It just seems like he's been around forever. Victor Bolden's only a junior. Their issue really, unfortunately, they've had some quarterback issues this year. They've got a couple of freshmen. They had an injury early, so they haven't been able to really take advantage of these really good receivers and guys like Bolden. And maybe it clicks for them this week. Oregon State always seems to have those guys on the outside on offense that can cause problems. Really, though, I think this is a game where if the Oregon offense is efficient, they really should be able to dictate the tempo and the pace of this game and the flow, and that's where this game is going to be won or lost for the Ducks.
Yeah, I think if I'm Oregon, I'm thinking if we don't lose the turnover battle by about 5 or 6, and if we don't give up 2 or 3 special teams touchdowns, ultimately this probably should go the Ducks' way. Just don't hurt yourself. Don't lose the game. You've got more than enough to win it. You've got enough to keep Oregon State from winning it. Just don't lose it yourself. Commit enough mistakes. But that's why they play the games, because the opportunity does exist. So the Ducks do need to take care of business.
It should be the 109th consecutive sellout at Autzen Stadium. It's the 119th Civil War on a Friday, 1:05 kickoff. It's on FS1, and we'll be here early next week to wrap this one up and preview maybe some bowl options at that point for the Oregon Ducks. A lot of the latest projections have Oregon and Oklahoma State matching up in the Alamo Bowl. Not a bad matchup there. So until next time, if you have questions for Rob or I, you can get to us on Twitter. I am at McNamara UO. He is at Duck Football. Until next time, we'll see you.
Gets the corner into the end zone for the touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.